I'd like to welcome Tahir Yousaf to the stage. Thank you very much. Good morning, everyone. As David said, my name's Tahir Yousaf. I am one of the Associate Directors for IT at Birmingham City University. But actually, for my sins, I led the Oracle project at Birmingham City University. I'm going to take you through a few bits about Birmingham City University. So the first thing I have to say is we're not the University of Birmingham. Get that one out of the way. But what might be useful is I realized that because I'm here on the last day and I wasn't able to attend the previous 2 days, if you do want to reach out and perhaps connect either with me or actually anybody else in the room about your experience of this presentation, then there's a cool thing you can do, which is if you have your LinkedIn app. Oh, I think I might have a presentation problem. I'm changing slides. Thank you. Then there's a little button on the bottom, on the people side, and if you click on Find Nearby, you'll be actually able to see everybody who's in the room. And I've got mine turned on, so it's really easy to be able to connect to both me and everybody else who's here. Okay? So while you fumble with your phones, let me take you through the USPs, okay? So we're an institution of approximately 24,000 students. They source from over 80 countries. We're a leader in the creative arts, so we incorporate the now Royal Birmingham Conservatoire, we incorporate the Birmingham School of Acting, we have there the Birmingham School of Jewellery, and we can trace our history back all the way back to 1834. But largely, what we're about is transforming lives, as I think we all are. And that's just one of our ceremonies that takes place annually. Now, what's interesting about that image is, I mean, I'd seen these things before I began at the university, and I started about 3 years ago, but it didn't really have an impact for me, the people in the group there. So the students that are going through these ceremonies and going through the institution, learning what they need to learn and picking up all these amazing skills, it genuinely does transform their lives. So the truth of it is, of course, that for many of them, they may be first to university. For many of them, they may not have had the opportunity to have a support network at home that can help them through such an important part of their journey through life. And actually, as much as there are parents and loved ones within this group, equally there are what I think is then by that time an extended family of our academics, our professional services staff, who have joined to be able to celebrate a pretty incredible day. But actually, when it came down to it, we realized that in some ways we weren't fully supporting our academic colleagues, our professional services staff, to have as much time as humanly possible to be able to focus on our aim, which was learning and education. We found ourselves in a place where we needed to rethink how we did things so that we could give more time for those types of activities. Okay? Now, so we had digital strategies. Everybody has a digital strategy. Most of them will sit in some kind of nondescript version in draft form for a heck of a long time. And we had all of that. But when we looked at what we wanted to do, actually what we didn't want to do was come into the IT group and say, okay, fine, so what's new with digital? What should we do? We felt that was the wrong way around. Instead, what we wanted to do was ask the business, okay, so what do you think digital means for you? And actually the initial responses were a bit dry. They weren't that compelling. So in a never-ending effort to try and get myself fired, which I've continued throughout, I found some of our senior leaders, first day back from their annual leave, preferably when they'd been to somewhere sunny, so they were full of vitamin D. I worked with their PAs, who I bought chocolates, and made friends with, so that they kept the secret hidden, and arranged a meeting first thing back. When they arrived at the meeting, instead of having a nondescript meeting with a bald me, we shoved a camera in their face, strapped a microphone to them, and asked them complicated questions like, where would you want your department to be in 5 years' time? What I'm going to show you in a moment is the response from our then finance director, Chris Hall. Keeping in mind, totally unrehearsed, totally unprepared for, this is what Chris said.
If I were to look at where we need to be in 4 or 5 years' time, an enterprise-wide solution for the management of our data, we're utilising corporate performance management software much more extensively, in fact almost exclusively compared to where we are at the moment. We've done away with the spreadsheet anarchy. We're not trying to stitch together endless pieces of data within multiple spreadsheets. We will have empowered colleagues across the University Executive Group and colleagues across the Professional Services Group to be making their own decisions based upon high quality finance data input and input from their finance business partners. And I think that is a pretty transformational consequence of having worked our way through over this last 4 or 5 year period to a position where finance has completely transformed the way in which it interacts with the rest of the business.
So after running a number of those, what was interesting to me was nobody focused on the processes. Nobody focused on the actual technology. What they focused on was a radical shift in the way in which we delivered the business function. It was all about creating more space, more time for more quality. So, unsurprisingly, we started to look at how we could develop a business case that would support that aim. Okay? So we started off in a traditional sense and we said, you know what, on the ground we have too much transactional processing. So this is just stuff that fills up the day. We have quite a lot of compliance checking that we do. It's a heavily regulated sector. But at the end of it is the actual thing that the department is there to do, which might only account for maybe 2-3 hours in a week where a senior financial controller is able to offer an academic the support they need to be able to develop their course, to be able to get the resources they need, to be able to future plan. And we felt that that was wrong. So what we focused on was a strategy that would allow us to apply processes, people and technology, traditional triangle, to be able to get to a different state. And that was all about reducing the level of transactional processing, automating wherever possible the compliance checks that we had to complete so that we could release more quality time for business interactions. Now we went through a heck of a long process to be able to figure out what we wanted to do before we approached the market. But it was all about trying to understand how we could achieve those things without the limitation of a particular technology platform. And unsurprisingly, so hopefully everybody knows this, but we decided to go with the Oracle platform because for us it was an extremely mature set of tools. More than that, we realized that instead of trying to bite off smaller chunks of the challenge, that the only way we were going to achieve the kind of vision that was presented by Chris and other colleagues within the senior management team, it was about doing actually quite a lot of stuff. So we went forward with some very bold visions. You know, we looked at all of finance. We said, fine, we'll do all of finance. All of HR. All of talent management. Enterprise planning. Project financials. Business intelligence. Pretty much everything with layers of social interaction through the Oracle platform, which are woven in throughout. So essentially we bit off a really big chunk of technology to be able to support the aims that we wanted. And I've been throwing that slide up there for nearly a year now. And when I first put slides like that up there, actually there used to be two things. Either a sharp intake of breath that says, crikey, that's near impossible. You can't do all of that in one go. Or a ripple of smiles as people realized, good on you. I'm glad somebody wants to do something genuinely ambitious. So we developed a bit of a timeline about how we were going to attack it. And we chose Oracle Consulting to help us to implement it. So we had then an Oracle product and Oracle delivering it. And this is what we came up with. So we started in October last year. And a lot of that was just about making sure that Oracle as an organization, or Oracle Consulting, understood how HE worked. Because to be a performant team, you have to kind of have a certain connection and understanding how the other party works. And that was important for us, and it was important for Oracle. We then went straight into a period of iterative design, okay, which is actually just playing with it. Okay, so here's the really weird thing. An on-premise solution typically arrives completely empty, and you have to fill it with everything in your business to be able to make it work. A cloud-based solution on day one typically comes almost fully formed. Everything works, and you have to try your hardest not to break it. Okay? It's a different mindset. So we weren't really designing. Really what we were doing was understanding the capability of the product and seeing how we could apply it to our processes. February, we had an initial design phase. So while you can run a hell of a lot of things in an agile fashion, you still have to have some kind of understanding of what the outcome is going to be. Okay? And that was really about saying, okay, fine. These are the things that we thought we wanted before we began the process. Now we've played with it. We think these are the things that we need. And we set those in stone, and those are the things that we intended to deliver. We went through March and April into final build and integration, although by that time, of course, the timeline had to become blended. So much of our integration worked all the way up into our launch and after. But really that integration piece was about making it business ready. It was about making it performant. We did very little deep coding to be able to get the platforms to work. Because in general, if you find yourself in that kind of space, there are a few pitfalls, and I'll come to those. We did our final UAT and business readiness between April and July, and again, that moved over, passed into August, into September, elements into November. But really that was around people readiness. Systems readiness was largely an assumed piece. The system will work because it works for over 1 million other users. Carrying that assumption, we were able to focus instead on the people side of things. And they needed lots of support. And finally, our systems launched in August. Mid-August, although we had wanted beginning of August. And I'll come to some of the ordering of that in a moment. But a piece that you'll be following throughout the whole thing, hopefully, is the bar across the top, which is change. Now, the impact of change on any kind of program is that it will challenge you to think differently about what you intended to do. Okay? And the truth was that while we could plot a course on the technical side of things to be able to do an implementation to a fixed set of timescales, people don't change on a fixed timescale. People change as they need to. So actually, we said, okay, given that there is this massive suite of technology, how can we readjust the timelines so that we can give people the support they need on a change level? So we went live with HCM, talent and workforce management in August. That introduced levels of customer experience. We did finance project portfolio management in September alongside our finance master data. So this was all of our suppliers, customers. We then went on to, it's a horrible term, but sales ledger, which is more the student side of things, in November, and procure to pay in November. We have outstanding a payroll item, the next lump that's going to fall in terms of functionality, and that's looking like January, February. Key takeaway though is that from the outset we designed the entire platform to work as one piece. We just chose to release iteratively to be able to support people with change. There were a few challenges along the way. Okay, so first one, for the pure technical people in the room, I think this one will be anticipated. Integration. Okay? So here's a funny old thing. If you're a greenfield site, then integration will not present a challenge in any way, shape or form. But the truth is, if you're in the marketplace to be able to afford something like an Oracle platform, then typically you're a mature organization. You will have 10 to 20 years of significant business interactions that you want to be able to represent within the context of your future platform. And actually, it was a real pickle. When we presented the problem to Oracle, when we presented the problem to SAP, when we presented the problem to Workday, Technology One, lots of different platforms that came to our door. Actually, it was only really from our perspective Oracle that had a reasonable solution to this problem. And that was a little bit of technology called integration cloud services. Instead of just saying, brilliant, let's do an implementation, here's a long list of APIs that you have to integrate against, knock yourself out. They said, no, well, we have a bit of helper technology. And instead of us having to think about the entire context of the Oracle platform, we just created a very small window for the integrations that we needed. And we were able to make them stable and reliable just by using that technology. So if you are thinking about it, I very much recommend integration cloud services to simplify the nature of your integrations. Another challenge, okay, data migration. Now, we came from a relatively mature space. So we had a service-oriented architecture, we had Microsoft BizTalk, we had many years of experience in applying that type of technology into our data problems, okay? And our data scientists got properly excited about finally getting their hands on a transactional database with all the power of Oracle, and they thought, brilliant, well, you know, we have a really great ETL process, and they waxed lyrical, and then the realization came that actually it boils down to a complex set of CSV files which have to be processed in linear form. That feels like a bit of a negative, but actually on the other side of it I can say that actually it's kind of a positive. It's nice to have migration that's more waterfall. It's nice to have the surety that things will land. So actually we came to live with that and ultimately like it because it offered a very measured and practical pace for how we would get the data through. And it was a very useful, ultimately, exercise for us to follow. Another challenge, and this is a complex one, partnership. So I think we in HE often say the words, but I'm not sure we truly understand them. I can say that now, I'm 3 years in HE. What does partnership mean? And partnership means having a level of equity in the outcome. So that if we fail, then the partner's failing. If we succeed, then the partner's succeeding. You can't allow a situation whereby either party can succeed while the other fails. So from the outset, we thought about how we could ensure that all the things that mattered to us were the same that mattered to our partners. Okay, so from the level of making sure that we had outcome-based specification that was based on adoption, not delivery of technology. From being able to make sure that for the key dates that we were engineering, they were important and resonated with the partner as well as important for us and our business. And throughout the whole piece, we asked our partner to be able to take on board the idea that principally our mission is to improve the lives of students and create opportunity. And Oracle heard us, and they joined that. We set up an Oracle Student Innovation Award. We had as many interactions as we could possibly do with Oracle as a partner and our students to make sure that they understood that what we're doing behind the scenes is creating stronger links to the rest of the world. And that was really cool. It was something that we really were quite proud of. We also, this is terrible because my CFO, David, calls this the Team Tinder slide. We tried to make sure that for everybody who was working on the project, they understood the power of their experience and opinion. Okay. So apart from the bald guy in the middle, we had headshots produced for all the core leaders on the team. We gave them social media coaching. We asked them to think about at least once a week waking up in the morning and sharing their insight with others. Because actually, at the core of it, we are a community. We're a peer community. For you folks in the room, you already realize the fact that you have more in common with each other than perhaps other people in your own organization, your own institution, because you do the same thing. And there's strength in that community. It has huge impact. It has huge power. And we've leaned on that community a lot throughout this journey. And coming to it, let's think about how you're choosing your team. So once again, in my never-ending effort to try and get myself fired, I asked in meetings, who are the most important people in your department? Who are the people that you can't live without? You couldn't get through a single day without? Finance. Who are those people? And when they said Rita, Bob and Sue, I said, brilliant, I'm going to second Rita, Bob and Sue for a year. I think I actually left the finance SMT with one member on it. Simon, who was my boss at the time, I think probably remembers how difficult that was. But in the end, the equity that people bring to the table when they're delivering something for themselves is priceless. If you're giving up a year of your life to be able to correct all those things that you're annoyed about within the context of your processes or your department or the tools that you offer your team, you give more than 100%. You give everything that you have. And that really made a lot of difference throughout this project. You will need a community, okay? So these were our change champions. Each one of them had 10 to 20 individuals that they fostered within their own departments to be able to support the process of change. Now, what does that mean in reality? For an organization of approximately 5,500 staff, it meant that we had 200 change agents. How did we come to that metric? We thought about how many tribes there were, groups of people that had a common interest or goal, people that stood around a water cooler, talked about what was happening in the institution, and we tried to make sure that at least one person in each of those tribes understood what was happening, felt positive about the project. And while you can never have a community large enough, I would have loved to have 5,500 change champions, it did help to be able to spread the message. Because for all the communicating that you do, actually that direct human interaction is the most powerful. Now this is a cool one. So this is our Chief Financial Officer, David Wilkin. And I often get caught doing presentations because I tend to focus quite hard on getting the visuals right. And at the project launch, he said to me, "Tahir, I'm going to ask you, unfortunately, to do a very complicated presentation for me." I said, "No, not a problem, I'll put some days aside." He said, "Yeah, I just want you to put 3 characters on a single slide. 260. And he stood up at the project launch and he said to the collective audience, "We are going to do this project in 260 calendar days." Brilliant. Set the tone for the next 9 months. It allowed us to be able to demonstrate that we had complete alignment top down. It allowed us to be able to shorten all those complex discussions that can arise when you give people multiple options. It allowed us to focus and deliver. And ultimately we launched in 272 days, but it was the intention that counted. Another element. Yes, it's a cloud-based solution. Yes, it does go in relatively simply once you've got it all ready, but you still need to provide support for your people. I love this image because the 2 ladies on the right are actually 2 of our students. The lady on the left, as you see her, thank you, Samantha Johnson, actually mentored 2 of our students, Neelam and Misbah, as level 1 support personnel during our go live. So we took on board our own students to be able to support our staff as part of that go live. And it was brilliant. They came on board, they had virtually no training. Their key objective was to be able to help people with their problems. And typically, what was the help that they needed? They just didn't know how to get to a particular spot. So we applied cool technology that you might not have heard of, but it's worth mentioning, called guided learning. It's a bit like sat-nav for the application. Because we realized if we create static training materials, the product changes every 3 months. We have to have an ability to direct people to what they want to do that can dynamically change with the updates on the product. So for Neelam, Misbah and Charlotte, who wasn't in the picture, who ultimately succeeded on a full-time role within the HR department, so well done Charlotte, essentially guided people towards the support that was inbuilt to the product, which is a radical change to how typically we would have done these things. We didn't think, when we first started this journey, that solutions like Oracle were in our reach. We didn't think that organizations like Oracle would be able to engender the type of partnerships that HE looks for. I'm quite proud to say that we were wrong on both levels. Because the truth is that if you think carefully about how you approach your interaction with even a large partner like an Oracle, then you can succeed in forming a relationship. Some things do help. Think about doing your award near the end of the Oracle financial year. Might help, okay? But actually, there are a few things that might help more, okay? So we've covered a lot of numbers throughout this, and we ended up caught up in a lot of complex conversations around when we did what and how we did what, and they were really important numbers throughout this whole piece. The most important number, interestingly, is not the big one in the middle. From my perspective, the most important numbers are that we ran our procurement in 2 months. Because if you're trying to engage with a significant partner like an Oracle, the truth is you can't procure over a year. They can't sustain that level of continued interest in what you're doing and support you if you stretch things out over structure long term. You have to think about how you package your interaction so that it's attractive to them, not just in the financial sense, but in a way that allows them to report back and say, this quarter we will have this. Next quarter we will have that. That's compelling. That gets people to open up their discount books. Okay? Another number, which is perhaps the most important number, and the reason why there is really only one pace for cloud, which is that we had 0 major updates from build to launch. So we started our implementation on revision 13. We launched on revision 13. If you get caught in the trap of having multiple significant updates during your implementation, you will have rounds of rework. It's unavoidable. The only way to be able to avoid is to actually think about how you package the timing of your implementation. And that's the reason why it wasn't a 3-year program. That's the reason why it wasn't a 2-year program. That's the reason why it was an intention to do all the substantive work within 9 months. But for all that, if you're moving at that kind of pace, or even at the slower pace, you will create a level of confusion and fear about the change. And the truth of it is, when you get to the other side, actually, what you're intending to do might not be that powerfully different. Might actually be perfectly fine. But if you don't tackle the issue of people's anticipation of a potential negative outcome, even if you succeed, you can potentially fail. So we made sure that we let people see the product as often as we possibly could. Okay? And that wasn't, here's an email, this is what you're going to get. It wasn't, go and have a look at this manual. It was, here, have a go. Play with it. And again, we did the same old trick. Every time we put people through the mill, at the end of it, we shoved a camera in their face, strapped a microphone to them, and said, tell me how you felt. And this was actually one of the first showings we had, first demonstrations we had of the system, all the way back in, I think, February or March.
I thought it was absolutely fantastic. Can't wait to see this system go live, be able to do some value-added work, be able to produce my reports really efficiently, accurately, give my managers exactly what they want.
Yeah, really good. We found it really informative, really interesting session. We've come away, even though we're on the project, we've come away learning new things and finding out new things, so I found it really enjoyable.
I really liked David Wilkins' speech at the beginning, where he sort of talked about what a difference it's going to make to the organisation.
The experience of the event today was very good. It was very informative. It showed us all the different things that the system would offer us and obviously how we could do the administration. So yeah, it was really good. I'm looking forward to using the system.
It was really interesting to see a representation of the system, even if it's not our absolute bespoke one, and to see how actually easy it is to use. From a training perspective, that was one of my concerns, that there was going to be, whatever anybody said, there was going to be a shed load of training needed, but I don't think that's the case. So I think it was really interesting.
Now, the lady at the end, Pat, I love Pat. had been our training manager for over 25 years. There were folks in the institution, man and boy, that she had essentially trained and taken through all the complex needs of a typical HE person. Yes. Oh, sorry. and actually her response, first seeing the application, was the most powerful for me, because she knew the level of experience and aptitude of the entire organisation. And when she gave it a thumbs up, I knew we were going to be all right. So, it's almost like a fairy tale to hear. It's brilliant. So, you did all this stuff and everything's wonderful, and surely nothing else can now go wrong. Well, no. No. It's a part of our journey. The truth is, of course, that while we've conquered that technology portion of the triangle, the continued effort of the program remains. Over the course of the next 4 years, of course, we are still focusing on improving processes, supporting people, and getting into a cycle of continuous improvement. But as well as that, of course, I'm sticking with the Hitchcock theme, there are things that are lurking within our organisation, as they are, I think, for all of us, that potentially prevent us from achieving our ultimate intention when it comes to cloud. Many of us still have elements of our platforms that are resistant to transfer to cloud because they're just so old. Okay? Probably everybody can think of a server room, a rack room, a comms hub that just looks like a bomb hit it. Okay? Those things will stand in your way. They can return to bite you. Okay? And they impact potentially your ability to actually use those cloud services, because until you've got a clean access route to your new services, potentially you could still be impacted. We all know about a skills gap, okay? But there is also an imagination gap. Throughout the whole process, while we were able to see the light and the potential of what we could achieve, we still had to deal with the fact that many others hadn't been on that spiritual journey of knowing that we could. And we had to take account of that. And we had to take people with us. But the truth is, not everybody will be able to see what you can see. And a little bit of that is persistence, resilience. Because the truth is, you almost have to totally commit yourself to achieving the outcome. Anybody know the difference between being committed and being involved? Okay, a good example that I like, right? So if you had your bacon and eggs in the morning, right? The chicken was involved, the pig was committed. Right? You have to really put your pound of flesh out there. You have to be willing to fail to be able to succeed. And I know for those that have been following and watching, it's been a bit like trying to watch a car wreck, because you're thinking, how possibly can they continue on this course of making all these powerful statements? How can they possibly continue? Well, the truth is, there was no other way to do it. We had to be able to make sure that success was the only practical outcome. And that was a great deal of fun to do through the year. I know Simon's grinning because, crikey, it gave us a few sleepless nights, didn't it? Okay, so at the end of that, right, so what does success look like? So success almost certainly doesn't look like perfection on an Oracle platform, okay? There is no such thing as perfection, okay? But there are some cool things that you can start to think about and do once you're on the other side of your journey, okay? Cool things like process automation. So from the ground up, much of the platform that we now have essentially relies on the power of the cloud to be able to automate processes wherever possible. Now let's be clear about this. At the very basic level, doing a macro in Excel is a type of process automation, right? In this context, what we have is automated pattern matching of our invoices. We have early analysis of our talent profiles, but obviously they have to build. All of that cool technology starts to make a difference. But the most powerful thing is it's sewn into the very fabric of the platform. So it's not something that you have to think about delivering after the event. It's there. It's now just about understanding how you're going to use it. Another cool thing, okay? People were kind of skeptical when we picked such a large block of functionality from one vendor, okay? Sometimes it was thought of as being old-fashioned, okay? Why would you take everything from one vendor? But actually, having everything in one bucket's kind of useful, because suddenly you don't have to think about how you're going to sew together 15 things to be able to deliver information. So, January, February, we're looking at doing the first prototype of a chatbot. So you can just ask Alexa, if we find Alexa from last night. Could you please tell me how many days annual leave I have? Okay. Can you please give me the cutoff for our expenses? And they all sound like tiny benefits on top of what was a complicated program. But actually they help to be able to establish a level of expectation in our staff that these technologies will make a powerful difference in the future. And if we can set the expectation with our staff, then they will think of the use cases for how they will apply it to their roles in academia. Once you introduce a technology, people will find use for it. And that's quite an important piece of it. Okay, and the last slide, and it's a bit tongue-in-cheek, so my apologies, David, is the truth is modern cloud-based platforms are a little bit like a website. Hands up who's finished their website. Yeah, no hand ever goes up. But the truth is you never finish, right? You launch. So I would implore you, once you're going through your journey, don't imagine an end state of perfection. Please don't consider that you can only make use of the product when you've completely finished every single thing that you wanted from it. The truth is, when you had that empty bucket of an on-premise platform, until you finished, you couldn't make use. But on cloud, essentially what you have is a platform that either does exactly what you want it to do, or does something that achieves the same end in a slightly different way. And that, to a large extent, is the end of my presentation.
Thank you, Tahir. I was just checking with Sally if we've had time for, I think we're slightly over 1 or 2 questions, and I got the nod. So, as I said, now you can hopefully see why I've got a combination of admiration and also frustration and envy that I didn't do the same things when I was implementing projects and programs. Hopefully, as I said, you did enjoy that. Hopefully, you did learn 1 or 2 things to perhaps take back to your institution. So, quickly, we have 1 or 2 speedy questions. Anyone in the audience has a burning question they would like to ask? Yes, please.
You talked very impressively about the rapid deployment, but you said earlier in your presentation that getting to that understanding of what you wanted to do, first that vision, took a long time. So how long did the kind of discovery and elicitation startup phase take to get to that understanding, that vision that enabled that rapid deployment?
So, less deployment focused, but the idea of understanding what we wanted our outcome state to be. So ignoring technology, ignoring Oracle, just getting to the business case. How do we expend a certain amount of resource to be able to achieve a business outcome? That was probably a 9-month period. which, if you think about it, is quite long, given the implementation cycle. The truth was, though, until you have a clear idea of what you want to achieve in a business context, I really wouldn't recommend that you commit money towards doing any kind of large program, because ultimately you potentially might not achieve what you wanted to.
Any other quick questions? Going once, twice? Okay, Tahir, are you around all day?
I am.
Tahir's around all day, so if you have any other questions, please grab him during the breaks, lunch, etc. Thank you again, Tahir, very much.